Hey, it's Lauren. So this particular video, I am very excited to bring to you because this video has nothing to do with the brands that I will be using on my face. This is strictly a tips and tricks tutorial to maximize whatever products you have at home on your own to make them work for you. And honestly, I feel like this is such an underrated part of what I do. I get so caught up in the reviews and all of the new stuff, but I think it's really important to be able to use the products that you have and really enjoy them and not just keep worrying about the next thing that's coming out. So I hope that you'll enjoy this video today. Let me just say, as a preface to this, I really believe in enhancing your own beauty and not chasing after the Instagram face standards, what have you. It's totally fine if you want to do the full beat, whatever, but I would say most people on a day-to-day basis are looking for something that they can put on to make them look and feel like their best selves. You know what I'm saying? So I did a poll on my Instagram stories to kind of gauge what the average person is using on their face and gravitating towards. And so I put up liquid versus cream versus powder, on all these different categories. And so for today's video, I'm going to be using the types of products that won out in that poll. If you're not following me over on Instagram, go ahead and check that out. I do post some polls and stories and things like that. So let's get started. So like I said, this video is not focused on brands per se. Most of what I will be putting on my brushes and getting onto my face, I will be doing off camera because, again, I don't want you to focus on the products. I want you to focus on the application. You might see a pencil because I have a hard time not showing those, but, focus on what we're doing here, not the product. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a liquid foundation. This is one that's a little bit of a fuller coverage. Let's rewind. I prepped my face. I am well moisturized. As you can see, I've got a little glisten and glow. I think that being really, really well hydrated and moisturized is the key to a really beautiful application of whatever your base products are, whether you use a foundation or some type of concealer, what have you. So as you'll notice, what I'm doing, I focus all of my foundation and face products on the center of my face, and then I blend outwards. This way, I don't end up with lots of hard lines along the jaw, in the hairline, you name it. So like I said, this is quite a heavy coverage foundation, and it really kind of eliminates my need for any type of concealer. And so here I'm just kind of blending it out. I'm just using a flat brush. You can use your fingers, you can use a sponge. I am a big believer in using whatever tools you are comfortable with. I think with foundation, there's really not a whole lot of wrong ways to get it on. My preference, like I said, is starting in the center of the face, working my way out, and working in thin layers. I think that's always the best way to go. The other thing I will say is that I tend to use both a brush and my fingers when I apply my skin products. And the reason is because I feel like I can get better control with the brush, and then I get a better blend with my fingers because you get that warmth. And now I'm going to put a little bit around my mouth because that is where I tend to have some redness, residual from perioral dermatitis. So as you'll notice, I'm taking my time getting this all worked out, especially because this is a fuller coverage. And I'm actually going to bring this pretty close up to my lash line. One thing you should know about when you do this, it can make your eyes look really bright and awake, but I want you to look at something. It makes my eye look a bit smaller compared to this side where I've got a little more skin, and my lashes are pretty dark. So it kind of creates that shadow. Sometimes I will go all the way up to that lash line. Other times I don't. Just kind of depends on my mood. The one thing you should know about that though is if you do go all the way up to the lash line, sometimes it can make that inner waterline look a little more pink and it can almost make you look a little sick. So if that happens, I recommend having a nude color pencil that you can pop into your waterline, which is going to really open things back up. So let me do that real quick just so you can get kind of an idea. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. You see what I'm saying? Okay, now that I've got all of that kind of put on with a brush, I'm just going to use my fingers and kind of pat, because this really is one of those steps that helps everything kind of melt in. You can kind of work out any lines that may have been put in by the brush. You can really kind of get it closer to that hairline without painting your hair. And that just helps everything look that much more seamless. So I'm gonna just take a little teeny tiny bit extra on a smaller brush. And this is a step where if you were not using such a heavy coverage foundation, you could go back in with a concealer. And what I like to do is my under eyes tend to get kind of hollow right through here. So I like to pop a little bit extra right where that little like seam is between the thinner portion of my under eye and my face. I also will typically drag this up on the sides of my nose because I get a little bit of redness. This is the step where you can really go in and perfect and conceal a bit more if you need to, wherever your redness is, if you have any broken capillaries. I always get this one little splotch on my cheek for some reason that kind of popped up during pregnancy. And then again, going in with your finger to kind of melt it all back together. So there we have our base. Make sure I don't have any hard lines anywhere. Still got some glow going on. So at this point, this is where I go in with a cheek color. Now, wherever you put your cheek color can really change the shape of your face. I have a very round face. I have very, very full cheeks. So if I put my blush right here on the apples of my cheeks, I can end up looking like a porcelain doll. So my preference for my blush application is much further back, because even when you turn my face like this, if I start further back on my face, you still see it front and center because my cheek is so big. I start further back, higher up, and I pull it up here. Same thing over here. That works best for my face shape. It's really kind of, you have to understand your face shape and also the goal that you're trying to achieve. So for me, I really want to make my face look a little bit thinner and not so round. So having some of those angles is really, really helpful. And I'm using a cream blush in kind of a peachy nude hue. I like colors that have a little more warmth on my face usually. And this was the one that won, cream versus powder. It was a pretty close call on this one on my polls, but I personally prefer a cream blush. I just think that they look more natural on me now. Every now and then I'll pop out a powder just kind of for fun, but I really do love cream blushes. I think that they just give you that natural kind of radiance and glisten. And sometimes when I have on a cream blush, I don't really feel like I need a highlight because it's already got that dewiness and it catches the light. You don't need extra shimmer. So the other thing that I can do at this point, you want to make sure that you don't have any hard seams where you've put your blush on and into your foundation. You can even go back with your foundation brush, whatever is left over on here, just very lightly feather around the edges of your blush, and you're really going to blend that out so it's seamless and it doesn't look like you have a bunch of makeup on. You can even pat a little bit. Okay. Now, at this point, I'm going to go in with just a little bit of a setting powder. I don't like to completely cut the radiance from my face. I think it looks very natural to have a little bit around the edges, especially around the hairline. But I do tend to get very oily, so I like to pop a little bit of powder just through here. And you can still see I've got some glow. I don't want to completely kill it. I'm not baking my face, but I do like to just bring that down just a little bit. And also, this helps under the eyes. Make sure you don't have any little creases. And go in and powder right through there, and it'll keep everything locked in. Once you get powder on, you're locking things in. So you want to make sure you don't have any creases, wrinkles, bumps in your makeup, because if you do, you're locking that on your face. Now, the other thing I do, I powder my eyelids because I tend to have transfer issues with my mascaras. Not so much with my eyeliner, but my mascaras for sure, because I have deep set eyes and my eyelashes touch my brow bone. So okay, we've still got a little bit of radiance. We didn't completely flatten out the face. Again, I like a very natural look. I want to look like myself, but a little more polished. Now we're going to add on a little bit of bronzer. I'm going to use a powdered bronzer today. This is a very matte formula. It doesn't have any shimmer to it. This is totally a preference thing. You could choose something with a little bit more glisten if you really like that kind of effect. I personally prefer something that doesn't have shimmer for my bronzer. I just think it looks better on my skin. And this is just to bring a little more dimension to the face. Also, because of the time of year, I don't really have a lot of color. I'm a little more fair than normal. So I like to add a little bit of a bronzer. And I kind of stick to the perimeters of my face, and then I lightly will go over in kind of like a W pattern across kind of here, because this is where the sun would hit you if you'd spent some time outside. And always make sure to drag a little bit of that color down the neck too. So now that we've finished with our powder products to kind of cut down on any excess shine, this is the point where I go back in with a highlighter. This is an optional step. You don't have to have a highlighter. I think, again, in our Instagram face society, we are so ingrained on having a highlighter, but if you have a cream blush, you don't necessarily need it. But I am going to use one today. I think that they're really pretty. And for this category, the cream highlight one, which you are my people, clearly, I love a cream highlight. I've kind of discovered that I don't love a powder highlight. I just don't think that they look as natural. I want them to look like my skin is juicy when I catch the light. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want that Namvo dewy dumpling glisten. So I find the high points of my cheekbone. You can kind of see where that light is already hitting. And that's where I go. And I like to bring it in a little bit of a C shape. I think this area of our face tends to be kind of neglected. You know what I'm saying? Like, not a lot is happening on that area of our face. So give it a little extra love with some highlight. And I just tap, tap, tap and really kind of blend it all in. I think the biggest tip for me is to really get everything to play together, you know? It all comes down to the blending and making it all seamless. And something I like to do also with my highlight, especially if I'm using a cream one, take a finger that doesn't have highlighter on it and find where that line is between where your highlight is and the rest of your makeup, and kind of pat back into the highlighter, and it kind of smooshes out any lines that you might have. This is also optional, but I think it's really pretty. I like to add a little bit of that highlight to the center of my nose, just on the bridge. Some people, you know, don't want to play up their nose or whatever, but I just think it adds a really nice kind of symmetry and focal point. And a lot of times I will carry that down onto my Cupid's bow. And I just think it adds a really pretty kind of central focal point to your face. Granted, if I'm going to wear a mask or something with COVID, I don't put as much product on my nose. But I'm at home right now, so this is what it is, all right? Okay, so this is where I'm at with my skin. I'm going to actually dab a little more coverage just right there. Okay, So for my eyes, I'll be honest, I don't do as much with my eyeshadow as I used to. Reason being, nothing is happening. I don't have anywhere to go. So what I am going to do though, because I want to kind of show you some different techniques and things that I think are really helpful, I'm going to just go in with my bronzer color on a really fluffy brush. Make sure I don't have too much on there. And I have deep set eyes. So depending on your eye shape, where you apply your eyeshadow is going to look very different. Because of my eye shape, when I open my eyes, you don't see a ton of my lid space, right? You see just a little tiny strip above my eyelashes. So when I put on eyeshadow, if I close my eyes and you see my full eyelid, if I put, you know, like a cut crease or something like that up into where my actual crease is, when I open my eye, it completely disappears. The whole halo eye trend does not work well for me because I have to start it way up here and I look very like Muppety, like I don't look normal. So you have to figure out your eye shape and what complements that best. Something that I often do is I will use a single eyeshadow all over my entire eye, and I can kind of just blend it out into almost nothing in my brow bone, and everybody's like, wow, what did you put on your face? Like, what eyeshadow did you use? I'll say one shade and people don't understand, but because of how my eye is shaped, I get kind of different dimensions the way that the light hits it. But just depending on your eye shape, you just got to figure out where you want things to hit. So what I'm going to do is just take this really fluffy brush with some bronzer for a little extra dimension. And if you keep your eye kind of open, you get a better idea of where the shadow is actually getting placed. You can kind of open and close to see. And I like using a fluffy brush for this type of technique because it has a very soft kind of wash effect. And you can see it just adds a little bit of dimension. It also kind of ties in with the face. This was something that I learned in a Patrick Ta masterclass. And I had done this before in the past with a bronzer and it made more sense. But like the reason, he explained it where it really is tying together different colors that are on your face and it really does help with that dimension. I love using a bronzer shade like on my crease. One thing you do have to be careful of, and I could have done a better job of this, is making sure not to put too much highlight where it's going to get close onto your brow bone because your eyeshadow or whatever you're using is going to grab onto that a little bit more because it's not powdered. So be cognizant of where your fingers are landing on your face if you're using a cream bronzer. All right, so there is that. And I'm actually going to take a little tiny pointed brush and also put a little tiny bit underneath my eyes. I always like the way that this looks. It adds just that extra little pop of dimension. And kind of like what I was talking about earlier, when you apply your foundation or your concealer, you can sometimes leave a little bit of space between your eyelashes and where your foundation is, and you'll have that natural shadow. Today I didn't do that because I wanted to show you some of the versatility of like how it can change your face depending on where you stop that, but I'm just going to add in a little more dimension again. I think that looks really nice. Okay, now the other thing I want to talk about today is that sometimes with a shimmery or sparkly eyeshadow, if you use a brush on it, you'll get a lot of kickback from that shimmer in the powder. So what I like to do to not only combat that, but usually have better color payoff is to apply with my fingers. So if you'll notice with my eyeshadow today, like I just said, I was focusing kind of on a little bit of a crease color and really kind of buffing and blending that out up in towards like the brow bone. And what I'm gonna do now, since I left that lid space a little more open, is take my finger, dip it into a shadow, and pop that on to my crease space. And I think that there's something about the way that the oils in your hands kind of push the product onto the skin a bit different than if you use a brush. Let me do the other eye and I'll just show you a little bit of the difference of the color payoff on my hand so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. gonna go in and add a little bit more. Kind of build it up a bit. Okay, so let me show you. I'm gonna take that shadow and put it on my hand, okay? There's that. Now I'm gonna take a clean brush, I'm gonna dip it into that same shadow. Look how much softer that is. I think when you use your fingers, you just get a lot more pigment sometimes with a really shimmery kind of shade. If you want it to look a little softer, that's when I say grab a brush. Since I've got a little on this brush, I'm just gonna kind of pop that in between where I use my finger and the other color, so there's not any gaps where it looks lighter. All right, now I'm going to do a little bit of brow work. Brows are something that, if you look through decades, have changed. There have been trends that have come and gone. Think about like the early 1920s and people had those little tiny pencil skinny brows. They came back again in the 90s. You know, the 80s were big fluffy brows. The 70s, I think, were kind of a thinner brow as well. 1950s, really high arches. You know, brows change over time. And I think a lot of people fall prey to changing their brows to match whatever the trend is. Personally, I have reached a point where my brows are kind of patchy. They are what they are. My brows are incredibly high peaks at the very tops of them. They're thinner on the tails. I tend to get like this little gap. You know what? My brows are what they are. And I've kind of reached this point where I am not interested in following trends of eyebrows. I'm just not. I don't want to overpluck my brows. I don't want to make them bigger than they actually are. So what I do is I really just kind of stick with whatever this is that they're doing, you know? And that works for me. You know, I think eyebrows are one of those things that, you know, you're born with a certain shape, and I think that a lot of times that shape works for you. I think that can be said about a lot of things when it comes to our beauty. You know, sometimes what you're born with is just better than what you're trying to create. I did go through a brow phase where I plucked them down to like, I think like 2 rows of hair in college, and I'm just glad that they grew back. So I'm just using a pencil to fill in a bit. I always like using something that doesn't have too much warmth in it. I had the opposite problem when my hair was really, really red. It was always really hard to find products that looked like a redhead's eyebrows. A lot of redheads naturally have more blonde eyebrows, but my natural brow hairs are really dark, so I would dye them red and then try to make them work with my hair. I always like to kind of sit back a little bit and then look at the overall shape. Make sure they're at least cousins, as State of Kate said. She's like, they're not even sisters, they're cousins. That girl, she cracks me up. Okay, so getting better. But see, I just kind of embrace this like high arch peak thing that I'm going. It's not even really an arch because the underneath is kind of straighter now that I've let them fill back in a bit. But the tops are like real high peaks. You'll notice, like, I like to spend a little bit of time on my eyebrows because I think that they add so much structure to the face. I'm good with that. All right, now we're gonna move into a little bit of eyeliner. This is the one where I pulled, and most people prefer a pencil over a liquid, and I tend to agree with that. I did go through a phase earlier on in my life where I really, really loved liquid liner. But now that I'm a little bit older and I'm busy, I feel like a pencil is so easy and versatile. So what I'm gonna do is just use a black liner. And I'm gonna kind of talk my way through this. So let me grab something so I can actually see what I'm doing. It's really important when you are applying your eyeliner, don't start up here. What you want to do is almost lay your liner on top of your eyelashes. And I think, especially for me, this is incredibly important to really fill in the gaps that are close to my eyelashes. If I make my eyeliner too thick, it just ends up all being dark when I open my eyes because, again, my lid space, it all gets so covered up because of how deep set my eyes are. So I try to stay very, very close into the lash line. And also in doing so, this helps to get rid of any gaps that you might see. And it makes the eyelashes look thicker. So you can see I just did a very, very thin little line. I'm going to take a smudger on the opposite end of this and kind of just push that product. I also don't go really past kind of the center of my eye. I just think for my eye shape, it kind of makes things look a little more open if I stay a little bit further on the outsides of my eyes. And I like to slightly pull those corners up, not like a full cat eye. I'm just using the smudger at this point to kind of drag that shape up. And I'm not looking, like I said, to do like a cat eye, but when I smile, because of my cheeks, they push up and I get lines that kind of pull down. So I like to create the illusion of my eyes being a little more lifted with that. So it's not like a super obviously like cat eye wing, but it definitely lifts my eyes up a little bit more. So let's repeat on the other side. And again, just staying real close to the lash line, no gaps. It's a great thing about smudgers too, is you can really push that product around. And if you have kind of an unsteady hand, having a smudger on the other end or even a small brush is great for really smoothing out that line. Sometimes if you get like a weird blob, instead of dragging it out and making a really hard line, push back into that eyeliner. Also, I think pencils tend to be pretty forgiving. All right, so the other thing that I want to share with you, because you can tell I didn't put any eyeliner on the bottom yet, I like using a different color on the bottom. And I'm trying to find the right one. Hang on a second, bear with me. I had everything else laid out, but I forgot I kind of wanted to show you this too. Okay, so something that I really like doing is when I'm wearing an eyeliner, I like using a black on the top and then a brown on the bottom. This really helps to open up the eye a bit. And I, again, kind of like how I do my top eyeliner, I like to stay on the outer corners of my eye. You can go underneath the lashes, which can give you kind of more of like a doll eye effect, or you can go just a little bit on the inside of the waterline. Now keep in mind that I did apply some of that lighter liner to my waterline, so this might not be the most pure brown color. We'll see what happens. But I like what this does to my eyes. I think it makes them look a little more sharp. It's just that little extra definition, and it really makes the whites of your eyes pop. Something you can also do is blink real hard, and it kind of smushes that color into your lashes a little bit better. Okay, so when it comes to lashes, I have to be honest with you, I don't really use an eyelash curler anymore. I use a lash serum, and that has made my eyelashes so much longer and a little more curved that when I use an eyelash curler most of the time, it makes my eyelashes stick straight up into my brow bone. And as you can see, they already touch my brow bone. So when I really put on a mascara that lifts them, it's just like they're poking backwards into my brow bone. I will demo just really quick so you can understand how I like to use an eyelash curler when I do. Kind of start normal and then rotate and then rotate. And this really kind of flares those outer corners and it just lifts everything up. This was a tip that I learned from Katie Deno. She is a celebrity makeup artist. Again, curve. She's got great tips. One thing I will recommend, a little word of caution, is when you are doing that, don't rest this on your face because you can disturb your makeup underneath. And then you'll end up with like a weird gapped line. So now I'm gonna go in with a mascara. I like to use a black mascara. You can use whatever color you find preferential. I think black for me just really emphasizes my eye color and my lashes more. So I'm just gonna go in and I get real close to the roots when I first start. And I wiggle just a little bit. I'm using a mascara that I find to be pretty dramatic on me. I'll do a lighter coat of it, but you can see it just, mascara is one of those products that really can take your look from like really nice to like just well done. Like it just rounds everything out in my opinion. It is my like desert island pick. If I had to have something, I would have a lip balm and a mascara. That's it. Well, and a sunscreen too, because, you know, desert island. So I'm just going to do a very quick coat on both eyes. And sometimes I will do my bottom lashes, sometimes I don't. I think today I'm going to skip it. I find that too much mascara on my bottom lashes can make my eyes look a little more tired, and I really want them to be bright and open and awake today. Sometimes I will notice that like one of my eyes seems to pick up more mascara than the other, and I have to balance them out. There we go, getting a little better. And something else that I do, which this you do at your own risk, all right? I don't really like traditional eyelash combs because I feel like they drag the lashes down. So sometimes I will take my tweezers and just kind of smooth out any little chunky bits. So, you know, that's not necessarily the safest thing to do, so do it at your own risk. I didn't tell you to do that, all right? Now, I've got a little bit of lip balm on. So I'm just gonna take off some of that excess with my fingers. And I'm just gonna use kind of a nude terracotta color on my lips today. Everybody voted for glossy. Okay, not everybody. Some of you like matte lips. Most of you voted for glossier looking lips though, and that's my personal preference as well. I don't like my lips to feel dry or dusty or chalky, and a lot of matte formulas do that. So we're gonna go in with a lip liner, and I'm not trying to change my lip shape. My lips, I have a thinner upper lip, I have a fatter bottom lip, and I just want to work with what I've got. So, you know, sometimes I will overline that top lip just a little bit, and I want to show you something too. So a lot of people, their lip color doesn't extend to the full edges of their lip. So I want you to look here. My color kind of stops down here, but you see the ridge of my lip is slightly above that. So I like to pull that up a little bit and actually take up the full space of my lip. And you'll see it's not like an overlining, but it's just working with what you've got and understanding your own features and anatomy, if you know what I'm saying. Now, something I like to do once I've got my lip liner on is to take my finger and kind of push that color into my lip, like the center of my lip a bit more. And the reason for that is that you're not gonna, if your other product that you put on top wears off, you're not gonna be left with a ring of color around your mouth. It kind of blends it into your lip a bit more. And I just think it looks a little bit softer. Now I'm gonna go in with a gloss on top of this, also in a kind of similar peachy terracotta family. I really like this kind of warm tone on me. I think it's really nice and flattering. All right, there you have it. These are the things that I do, the little tips and tricks that I feel like take my makeup from okay to elevating them. And they're not anything wild and crazy, but just changing the placement of things on your face, figuring out how it works with your bone structure can really change the way that your final product is. Really focusing on getting that eyeliner down into the lashes rather than letting it float above. Embracing your eyebrows, I think, can be a huge thing rather than completely drawing a new shape on, you know, or plucking them all out. I think little things like having a brown eyeliner paired with the darker liner on the top can really open your eyes up. Not going all the way into the corners. That's totally a look too that you can do, but if you're really wanting to kind of open up your eyes and make them look a little bit brighter and more awake, kind of keeping it out of those center corners can really, really help. So I hope that this has been helpful, and if you enjoyed this, please make sure to like and subscribe. It helps other people to find my channel, and I can continue to bring you this kind of content. If you haven't followed me over on Instagram, make sure you do that, because I do like to put up polls for my videos. I think it's really fun to involve you guys. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.